Okay everybody, well we're set up on the bench now and we've been starting on our saucer here. You can see I'm working on the top half right now, and what I've been doing is I've been starting to add our window sections onto the perimeter here of the saucer, and I'll talk to you guys a little bit about what we've been doing here. Now one of the very first steps that I did, which was very important, and you don't want to overlook this guys, is I took some acetone, cut slightly a little bit with water so I wouldn't wind up melting any plastic or anything, and I put that on a rag and I went all the way around the perimeter here and made sure that I cleaned off all the excess primer and paint that was on this. And that's a very critical and very important step, guys, because with having any contamination on here, your glue is not going to bond. And so later on when you're going back and doing your putty work and things like that, when you're trying to fix this seam, you're going to have issues where this is going to start coming apart on you, and you're going to have a seam that won't go away, or it'll keep splitting and things like that. So it's very important to make sure that anywhere you're gluing anything together on these models, that the plastic is perfectly clean and ready to go. So I started off with that, and then what I've been doing is I've been going around here and starting to add our little sections in, gluing them in one at a time. Now the areas here where we have our yellow LEDs for our thruster ports here, it's going to require trimming a little bit of this material away on each one of these window sections, and I'm just using my Dremel tool to do that. I'm grinding off about that much on each side and going around and repeating that process so that we have clearance for our light here to not touch on that wall, and make sure that the wall will come in and sit where it's supposed to. And so I've been doing that on each section here. Also, wherever I have a navigation light here on the perimeter, I've been doing the same thing to make sure that we have clearance, because what I'm going to be doing is, after this is all assembled, I'll be going in here and using some light blocking material, whether it's black enamel paint or tulip or something like that, to light block these lights. And if they're covered up, it will be really difficult to get in there and do that. We want to do that because we don't want our lights to be flashing and bleeding, light inside the model, and maybe bleeding into where you can see it lighting up in the windows and things like that. So we're grinding this little bit of material there away on each one. Now again, talking about this model, we have the Airlock Assembly that's located on the port side of the model, on the right below the red navigation light. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind on these sections. It has to line up where, when you come around here to the port side, that each half of the Airlock Assembly, we talked about this in the last video, but I'll remind you of it again. It's a very important step. If you get that wrong, you won't have your airlock in the right place. So you start off here on the starboard side and start working your way around. That's the way I chose to do this, but you want to make sure that these two sections right here wind up exactly in this spot here, which your airlock door should be split and be directly below the red navigation light on the port side. So we'll make sure we do that. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take my Dremel tool and show you how I'm doing this. Just setting on my low setting here at about 3.5 on the speed, and I'm just grinding this material away here, right next to that last mounting tab, and I'm taking it all the way flush to the inside of the wall there. And then you can just take your finger and just scrape off the excess there. We don't have to worry about that being really pretty. We just want to make sure that that material is gone so that these sections will fit in there nice and flush. And this will help us to make sure these are all lined up nice and pretty. Okay, so that's really easy to do. And what I've also done is I've gone in and I've sanded all these parts on the edges to make sure all the flash and all the material's gone, so that it will line up. And I've also cleared out all the window ports with my hobby knife, just to make sure we got rid of all that little flash and everything that's in there before we go ahead and glue these in place. And now what I've been doing here, guys, is I've been starting to glue these in place here and working my way around, paying really close attention. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this for you here. And you can see here that we have this seam reach one of these butts together. Now you want to make sure that you don't have any step in that. And what I mean by step is that one of these sections is higher than the other one, because you're going to have a lot of trouble later on when you go to fill in this little seam right here to make this look nice. So when you glue these on, make sure that you line those up and run your finger over it and make sure that they're feeling nice and smooth when you transition from one to the next, that they're nice and level. And that's going to save you a lot of headache later on, guys, when you're trying to fill in these seams and make them look nice. I'll be showing you a little trick later on when we get to that point where we're going to apply just a little, we're going to tape off this area around this, and we're going to apply just a little bit of filler in here on this seam so that we can lightly sand that and preserve most of our nice detail for our sensor bands all the way around the edges of this model. That's one thing that a lot of people overlook about this, and this is a nice little detail that's been molded in. It looks okay when you put the decals on it, but to have those little textures there, that makes the model really, really nice when you finish with it. And I learned something on that on the last refit that I built, and I'm going to expand what I learned on that and make these come out really nice. So let me go ahead and finish grinding the rest of these little window sections out here with my Dremel, and then I'll come back and we're going to continue gluing these in place and show you how we get that all finished up. Be right back, guys. Alright everybody, well here I'm back with you, and I've modified all my window sections here, and so what we're going to be doing now is we're going to continue moving forward. We're going to get all these glued in place. Now again, mentioning we want to pay attention to our sections here. This is the one I'm going to be working with next. And so I'm just kind of test fitting it really quick to make sure it's going to be okay and everything looks good, like it's lining up really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and start applying my glue. We're going to glue on this little channel here on the outer edge, and we're going to just work our way around. And don't be afraid to use glue here, guys. You want to make sure you get this glued nice and secure, because this is going to be a main structure on the model, holding the top and bottom of the saucer halves together. So don't be too stingy on your glue here, guys. You don't want to glob it on where it's going to, you know, leak all over the model and everything, but you want to make sure you get plenty of glue on here. And that's going to make for a nice, solid structure when we put this together. I'm going to dab a little bit on the end here to butt up to our adjoining wall here. And we want to make sure this is really solid, guys, because when we come back on this later and start sanding on it and everything, when we get our saucer assembled, we don't want this to be moving around, like I said, or flexing or cracking or anything like that. And that can cause us some real problems here down the road if we're not paying attention here when we do this particular part. Now I always keep a little piece of paper towel here handy when I'm gluing. You can see I got a little bit of glue that leaked out. Now if you get that right away, you can see how easily that just wipes right off of there. We're not smearing it or anything. It's been removed, all of our excess glue. And you actually want to see a little bit of that glue coming out, guys, because that means that you've got a nice solid glue joint there. You've got plenty of glue in there, and it's sticking all around. And that's exactly what you want. You can see I'm doing the same process I just talked about here. I'm running my finger over this to make sure this edge is nice and smooth here and nice and flush. We don't have that step going on. And I'm just running my finger around this edge here to make sure we don't have anything sticking out. And this all locked down in place. So I'm going to go ahead and add another little bead of glue here up on the top side of this. We don't want to put too much glue inside of the channel. I'll show you what I'm talking about here, guys, when I can change the angle. This area right here, let me go ahead and zoom in on this for you, because this is something else that's pretty important. This area right here, where our bottom of our saucer is actually going to sit inside of this slot and go down in there, we don't want a lot of glue built up in that, because if you build up a lot of glue in there, the saucer, when this glue gets hard, the saucer's not going to bottom out all the way in there, and you're going to have a lip sticking up. You're going to have a hard time getting the saucer to sit in there nice and flat. So gluing along the edges is just fine, like I did here, but you don't want to pile it up inside this little area right here. We're only going to glue that when we get ready to actually seal the saucer down in place permanently. So that's just another little thing to keep in mind. And let's go ahead and continue working our way around here. We've got to this section now where we want to use one of our assemblies that we talked about that has the airlock on that. So we want to make sure we're starting off on this end of it, because we're going to be butting up against the other half just like this. And so this piece here is now ready to go. And so I'll go ahead and apply my glue again, just like we did on the last one. Again, just making sure I use a liberal amount of glue here. Not going too crazy, but I just want to make sure this entire area here has got a nice solid bead of glue on it, and then up over the top along the wall here where it's going to make contact, and then just a little dab here on the edge where it's going to butt up against the wall we just installed. Wipe off a little bit of the excess there. Okay, we're going to lay this one on. As you can see, this is working out really nice. And again, I'm just going to go here and lightly work that and make sure that we're staying perfectly centered on that and we're getting a nice no step there on that adjoining part. Now what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to go back and put another bead here right on the top. Again, we went back and we made sure all these parts were clean where they're touching each other, and we'll have a really strong glue joint when we're dried here. And again, you know, some people say that this old Tester's glue is not that great, but let me tell you guys, if you have clean styrene plastic, this stuff will bond perfectly fine. It bonds just as good as any of that so-called expensive glue that's out there. And it's all about your surface and your preparation, guys. And you'll see that you're literally melting the plastic together with this. It's forming a molecular weld, but it only is effective if the area is clean. If anything is in there contaminating it, you're going to cause weakness in the joint, and that's a mistake that a lot of people make, and they kind of blame it on the glue, but the glue doesn't have anything to do with it. It's the preparation and getting it right, getting it clean. Okay, so this is looking good, and we're going to dab a little bit here on the back side of the adjoining walls to give this a nice solid bond, and that will help make that seal up really nice. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little toothpick here and I'm going to smooth this out on the back side so that we don't have any interference with the saucer going down on there nice and evenly like we talked about. And you've got to go back and check these because sometimes the stuff will move just on you, you know, just a little bit on you here. And like I said, we're really being critical about this because this is a really important step to how this model looks. So you can't overdo that too much. Okay guys, things are looking really good. Time to move on to our next section here. Just keep repeating this process. We're moving along very nicely here. Down in the lip there and up on the top. And then we'll apply just a little bit of glue here on the adjoining surface here. I've got a little imperfection I noticed on this part right here on the edge of the airlock door, but we're not going to worry about that because we're using a photo etch part from our paragraphic set that will actually go over the top of that and cover that up, so that's not an issue in this particular case, so we won't worry about that. Get this worked in here. Everything is looking just beautiful so far, guys. Time to add a little bit more here up on the top. And again, we'll put another little dab on the back section where they butt together. And we'll smooth this out with our toothpick. Okay guys, we're looking really good here. We're down to our very last section, and let's go ahead and glue this one in place. All right. Oops, need to dab a little bit on this end piece here that I forgot to do. All right. You can see we got a little bit that squirted out around the edge. If we don't wait too long, we can come with our paper towel here and just take care of that just like that. here on the back side and up on the top. Alright guys, well, you can see we were very successful here. I'll tilt this down here just for you a little bit. Very successful. Our perimeter all the way around here is looking really good. And we're going to let this sit here for a little bit and dry. Then I'll come back, guys. And our next step here today will be to start working on our strip lighting. Now that we can see where exactly where all of our window locations are, we're going to start adding our little strip lights in. I'll fire up the solder iron and we'll show you some couple little tips on soldering the LED strip and getting good nice solid connections with that. So we'll be back in just a couple seconds here, guys, and we'll show you how things. So here we are again, everybody, set up and ready to go. And what I've done here is I've broken out my LED tape. In this particular case, I'm using some double density LED tape. I buy this particular stuff from a company called LEDwholesalers.com. I'll put that up on the screen here for you. And they offer different types of LED tape. They offer single density, double density, which the difference being is how many LEDs per inch you have here. Since we're lighting these small clusters of windows, we want nice even lighting going on there, so I'm using this double density tape. This particular color or is called, it's just their standard white. They also have a cool white and they have a warm white. We're using the standard white on this, which will give a nice natural looking lighting effect for our window ports. And I've determined that I need 6 strips here. It's very important that you pay attention with this LED tape. There are segments here with these little white lines indicated on here, are the areas where you can cut into the tape. If you cut anywhere in between that, you'll destroy that section of tape because the resistors are wired in this to make a continuous circuit. Again, these have built-in resistors, so you don't need any type of resistor connected on this. You can connect it directly to power. And looking at this up close, you have these nice little, let me get you tight on this here and explain this for you. You can see here that we have the plus and minus. Now on this one it's marked the plus side, and you have these nice little brass connector tabs here, terminals. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using our solder iron, and we're going to tin these first, that you heard me talk about in our last soldering segment when we were soldering up our LEDs. So I've got one of these clamped in my helping hands here. Now, if you guys don't have one of these set of helping hands, I recommend getting yourself one of these because they really are helpful, as the word implies, to help you hold these parts and everything when you're doing soldering and things like that, or when you're working on parts, painting them or whatever. And it's one of the best little things that I ever bought for modeling. It's really been handy. And let me get you centered on this, and we'll get you nice and tight here and do some soldering on this. Alright, camera mount's fighting me a little bit here. Let's get you nice and close on that. That should be good. Okay, now again, I've got my my little sponge here watered up, and I'm cleaning my tip first, and I'm going to go ahead and move this light strip out of the way, and I'm going to tin my tip like I always do. Don't want to drip any solder on those. And we'll get a nice little head start here, and then we're going to just go ahead and lightly put a nice little bead on each one of these. Should wind up with just a nice little dot on there like you can see. And that's all there is to that. We'll move on to the next one here. Clean my tip in between each try here. Again, not a whole lot of solder is needed here, guys. Just a nice little bead on there like that. And I've got my solder iron set at about 800 degrees here, so it's doing that nice and quickly for me, and we're not leaving it laying on there for an extended amount of time. You could maybe damage these if you saturate them with too much heat. And we'll keep tinning this between each one. You can see how quickly you can go through these guys. Again, we're looking for just that nice little solder dot on the end of each one. Okay, and we're down to the last one again. We're using 6 of these. We've got 6 window groupings that are of equal length. And then we've got one shorter one that we'll be doing that's back on the back side of the saucer. And then to light the rec deck, that's actually going to be an enclosed room since we're going to be using the Paragraphics photo etch part for that. So we'll be doing a little bit of different lighting technique to get light into that, and I'll get to that when we get to that part of the model. But these initial strips here are just going to be for the windows that run around the general part of the perimeter of the saucer. And so these are all the equal length. Okay, so we've got all these done. And we want to look up close on here again and make sure that we're looking at the right side here for the positive. And it looks like the positive is on this side here to the right. So we're going to break out our magnet wire now. And I want to make sure I'm still in camera here. I'm going to actually back up a little bit so I don't get too narrow of a field of view here for you. And let's go to work with our magnet wire. And we're going to do the same thing here that we did before, guys. We're going to tin this a little bit. I've got a little bit of solder on my tip here, and I'm just touching this on. And we've got a nice penetration there. And it's just going to take a light touch on this. And just hold it in place for just a second. And you can see we've got a nice solid bond on that. Now, we don't need much wire on this, guys. I'm going to cut these off fairly short, maybe about 4 inches long, because each one of these we're going to string in the saucer. We're going to string around a plus and a minus power wire to each one, and we'll tie them all in like that and make a nice parallel circuit so that each one of these has its own power going to it. And if we have a failure somewhere down the line, we won't lose the whole circuit. We talked about the difference before about the difference between a series and a parallel circuit. A series circuit is basically a chain where if an element of the chain fails, everything beyond that point ceases to work, guys. So I pretty much am, for any of my circuits that I'm building here for these models, I'm pretty much always going with a what's called a parallel circuit, so that each component has its own source of power. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into connecting everything up again. Okay, we only need about 4 inches here, so we'll leave it at that. We're done with this one. And we'll go on to the next. Again, we'll double check on each one to make sure we're on the correct terminal. And one thing you can do here, guys, I might as well show you this really quick. I've got my power supply right here. One thing you can do to make sure that you're looking at this correctly is just if you've either got a 9-volt battery with a couple leads on it, or you've got a power supply like I happen to have here, you can just test these real quick. Now, according to this, we should be plus on this side and minus on this side on this particular piece. And you can see when I touch this on here, we get it lit up. And that's at 12 volts, so that's really bright. We're only going to be running this at 9, guys, so no worries there. Okay, so we're correct on our polarity here, and let's go ahead and continue on. I'm going to do another red wire here, this time on the left side. That's why this can trick you, guys. You want to make sure you look at it, because when you turn these pieces of tape around or something from one end to the other, it's going to, the sides are going to switch on you, so you want to make sure you keep looking at that when you're doing this and not solder your wires on backwards. If you happen to do that, you'll be scratching your head figuring out why half of your lights aren't working, and that can be a problem. So Just double check as you go on each step, and it'll save you some heartache there. Okay, let's tin this piece of wire here again. Alright, we're ready to go. You can see that just takes a quick little dab if you've got a good hot solder iron, guys. And we've got good connections on here. They're not going to go anywhere. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and continue off camera here and get the rest of these soldered up. No point in boring you with the rest of that. And when we come back, we're going to have our saucer back here, and we're going to start installing these. So I'll see you with that in just a second, guys. Be right back. So I finished up soldering my LED strip lights with my magnet wire, guys, and now I've just started to lay some sections here in place. And let me zoom in on this for you here really quick. You can see that starting off here over at the rec deck area, this is a small opening here, and as I mentioned, we're going to have a little room that's going to be going in place here, made out of a photo etch part that's a boxed in room. So we won't be putting any strip lighting in here. We're going to light that on the side with a couple of small LEDs, and we'll cover that a little bit later on. And the same thing over here on this other area opposite of the rec deck. We have another small grouping of windows which I'll be using LED tape for. I'll just be making a smaller piece to put on there, but we're focusing right now on doing the main window groupings around the perimeter of the saucer, and you can see I've glued these down. What I've done is I've peeled off the backing tape on those and stuck those down, and I'm using a little dab of CA glue on the ends to help protect the wires from being torn off, and also in the center and on the other end so that the over time the piece can't start to peel or curl inside there and come off. So let's continue on here and we'll show you how this goes. We're going to peel off the backing here. Very easy to do. And this stuff's pretty sticky on its own, guys, but just for a little added security, I have always done this. I've always glued these in place on top of, just depending on the backing. And I just think it's a nice little extra step you can take to give yourself some extra security so that over time our lighting is going to continue looking nice and not move or change or fall apart on us here. So okay, we've got that one locked down, and like I said, we're just going to dab a couple of drops of CA here on the ends and in the center. And just a quick spritz with our zip kicker here. And just like that, she's locked down, good to go, guys. Let's continue on here. Trying to tuck this up as close as I can get to the wall without curling it up on the edges here. And this double density tape is nice, guys, because it lights nice and evenly. And when we have our light blocking done here, this is going to bounce light back and forth between the top and the bottom, and it's going to make those windows light up nice and even. And it sure beats the heck out of the old way the guys used to build these models when we were only dealing with single LEDs. I mean, if you look at some of the old videos on YouTube with some of the guys that built these a couple of years ago before we got this LED tape, you saw that they had to put quite a few individual LEDs in there, and it made for a real mess as far as the wiring and how much stuff you had to cram inside this saucer to get it lit evenly. So this is a lifesaver, and I really love this stuff. It's a revolution for model building, and it's become quite popular. And like I said, it's fairly inexpensive, and you can solve a lot of different lighting issues with this stuff really quick and really easy. And the nice thing about it too, like we talked about, there is no need for any resistors on these. You can hook them directly up to power and you're all set. They'll run from anywhere between 7 to 14 volts DC safely without burning out. I'll be running this particular lighting system on this model at 9 volts. That's pretty much my standard that I've gone to. It seems to work out fairly well. and 9-volt power adapters are the most common. Now, talking about power adapters a little bit, we might as well cover that subject here a little bit while we're working. You have to consider that not only is your voltage, but your amperage. It's one of the questions I get asked quite a bit about power supplies. And I found that a 1.5 amp 9-volt power supply is usually the hot ticket for power supplies for these kits. By the time you get enough lighting in these large enterprise models, they're going to require quite a bit of juice, and a 1.5 amp seems to cover it fairly well. You don't want to go under on your amperage rating, because doing that, it may work, but you might notice that over time that starts to get kind of hot because it's working so hard. You're better off going bigger, and that way it's not working quite as hard. And again, the model will only pull, the lighting system will only pull what it needs. Going too much is not going to hurt it at all, but not having enough is a bad thing. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay guys, we've got this thing all done up here really nice. You can see we've got all of our strips in place, and what we'll be doing is later is we're going to be coming back, like I mentioned, we're going to be running our power wire perimeter all the way around this, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be tying all these strip lights together, and we're also going to be tying in our LEDs that we have here for our thruster ports, so that whenever we power up the model, the lighting will always be on. I've noticed that on the pretty much all the movies where they show the Enterprise, these thrusters are always on. I know there's some boards out there that simulate them, you know, going off and on and things like that, but in the actual movie they're on all the time whenever the ship is powered up. So you could do it different ways, but you know, and I don't want to sound like a know-it-all in these videos either about, you know, the Enterprise this, Enterprise that, but just for the people out there who are interested in some of the details on it. You know, a model's a model, you can build it your own way. So but some of the things, you know, a lot of people have done research and things like that about the movies and things, and there's just some things about the Refit and the A and the other things that are a little bit different, and that's one of them. So you can consider that when you go to do your build. So what we're going to be doing too here, guys, in the next video when we come back, we're going to be building a little bit of a light box here when we mount our LED for our crystal here and our impulse engines, because we want to have these separate. And again, mentioning that I got a custom-made board from Ralph at Tenant Controls, which is going to allow me to power up my crystal here and power up my impulse engines, and then also power up my warp engines now. I wanted to do that on my last refit, but Ralph has redesigned the board. I'll explain that a little bit more when we get to that point, but that's going to be a really cool effect on this model that we're going to have different. And things are coming along really good here on this, guys. So that's going to be a wrap for this one. Before we sign off here, guys, I'll back the camera up real quick for you, and we'll move this saucer out of the way, and I'll bring over the Reliant, and you guys can have a look at the preliminary work that I've been doing on that. Nothing really fancy so far, but I thought you guys might be interested in seeing it. We're working on our window ports on this, and again, you know, you guys are familiar with these. We have groups of windows that are both round and elongated. Now what I've started to do here is I've started to work on the round windows first, and let me get you zoomed in on this. I'll get you over to this side here a little bit more, and you can see things are looking really nice here, guys. I just describing what I've done here a little bit. I started off with my pin vise, which is basically a fancy term for a handheld drill, and I made sure that I was perfectly centered on each hole, and I started off with a really tiny pilot hole and made sure I was exactly centered on each one. These window ports on this model are scribed in here really nicely so you can see them. And once I was established with that, I came to the next size drill bit and up and up and up until I got to the exact same diameter as the window is supposed to be, and then I just drilled that through. And on the back side, what I actually did is I went and took a couple size larger drill bit and just kind of hit them really quick so that it gave a chamfered effect, so that when the lighting is coming into these, it's not going to look cut off when you look at it from an angle or something like that. It'll generate the light into these from the back side nice and even, and you'll get a really nice effect with that. It'll look good from all the angles. And so what we'll be doing next, guys, beyond that, is I've got pretty much all the round windows done on this, on the edges here and on the BC deck. So we've got these oval shaped or elongated windows that need to be done next. So the technique I'll be using to do those is I'll drill 2 holes, one on each end and one in the center, and I'll start working my way up again with the drill bits until I get the edges exact to the way I want them, and they'll have a nice round edge with my drill bit. And then I'll be taking a hand file and I'll be just lightly filing these in the center to get the flat part in the middle on each one. It's going to be a lot more tedious than doing these round ones. These were actually fairly easy. But fortunately on this model there's not a whole lot of the elongated windows on this, so it'll go pretty fast, and you just have to take your time. And as I said, you know, file a little bit at a time, and then stop and look, and then check it, and just keep going until you get it just right. And so we'll be doing that a little bit later. I've also started working in some of the spots here for the navigation lights, just drilling some small pilot holes. And we're going to make sure we get our LEDs of the right size here, probably some 1.8s or 2mm that'll be nice and scale on this model. And again, we're not going to have them sticking up at all. We're going to have them nice and flush like they're supposed to be. We've got a couple more at the back that need to be done. There's a lot of panels and everything that need to be cut out on this. We've got to cut this section out here in the center and clear out our bridge and to be able to pass lighting up into that. So there's a lot to do, but we're just off to a basic start here, and I thought I'd show you that. This model is really nice. It's not going to require a whole lot of cleanup. I've just been starting to go around in little areas here and there, cleaning up and rescribing some of these panels that had just a tiny little bit of flash in them and things like that to make them nice and crisp. And once we get all that cleaned up, guys, we'll be lightly scuffing this whole thing down with some 600 grit sandpaper, and then we'll be coating this with some adhesion promoter, and then we'll be priming it. So that's the plan going forward with this one, guys, and then we'll be going to work on the bottom half of the saucer. So that's a wrap for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll be back in a couple more days with a look at part 6 of our Enterprise refit build. And we'll be going to do more work on the saucer. We'll be working in some lighting for the bridge, and doing the navigation lights and marker lights for the bottom half of the saucer, and some more strip lighting on the bottom half of the saucer that'll point upward to light our bridge and light the other window groups that we need to light. So we'll see you then for that one, guys. Take care out there. Hope you guys are going to watch the Super Bowl and enjoy it. I know that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, taking a day off from modeling. So we'll see you next time, and until we do, everybody, happy modeling, everybody.